Picture this, it's 1973. You're walking alone down a quiet road in South Australia. The night is still, maybe a little too still, when suddenly you feel it, someone, or something, is watching you. You hear footsteps that don't belong to you. And when you turn, what you see is not human. This isn't just a ghost story. This is a chilling, real-life encounter from the archives of Australia's paranormal history, and to this day, it remains one of the most alarming unexplained cases on record. But here's the real question, was this a ghost? An alien? Or something in between? Stick with me, because as we break this story down, you might just start questioning what you thought was possible. To really appreciate this encounter, we've got to step back into the world of 1970s Australia. The country was in cultural transition, anti-war protests, new waves of immigration, and a booming interest in spirituality. At the same time, the 1970s were the golden era of UFO sightings worldwide. From the United States to Brazil to the outback of Australia, people were reporting strange lights, missing time, and close encounters. In fact, South Australia had already developed a reputation as a hotspot for the unexplained. Farmers reported strange circular burn marks in their fields. Fishermen along the coast claimed to see glowing discs rising out of the water at night. Even commercial pilots filed reports of unidentified craft shadowing their planes. So when we hear about a young woman named Margaret encountering something disturbing in 1973, we can't just shrug it off as imagination. The climate of the time suggests she wasn't alone in her experience. Quick question for you, do you believe these waves of sightings happen because something is really visiting us? Or do you think it's mass hysteria, people feeding off each other's fears? Margaret wasn't an eccentric conspiracy theorist. By all accounts, she was ordinary, a woman in her late 20s, working as a secretary in Adelaide, with no known interest in the paranormal. Friends described her as grounded, pragmatic, not the type to spin ghost stories. And that's what makes her case more disturbing. Encounters like these don't usually happen to people expecting them. They happen to those who least believe. That night in 1973, Margaret was walking home after visiting a friend. It was a walk she had done dozens of times before, a straight stretch of road, lined with eucalyptus trees that cast long shadows in the dim light. The smell of gum leaves filled the air, a typical Australian night. But halfway along her route, something changed. Margaret would later describe a sudden silence, so profound that even the insects stopped chirping. If you've ever been in the bush at night, you know how loud it usually is. Crickets, frogs, the occasional rustle of a possum. For all of it to vanish? That's unnatural. First came the footsteps. They echoed behind her, deliberate and heavy, yet when she spun around, no one was there. Then the temperature dropped. In the middle of a warm summer evening, she could see her breath fogging in front of her. And then, she saw it. A tall, thin figure appeared in the distance, faintly glowing blue. At first, she thought it might be a person with a lantern. But as it drew closer, she realized, it wasn't walking. It was gliding. Imagine that for a moment. You're frozen, your body refuses to move, and something is drifting toward you. Would you run? Would you scream? Or would you, like Margaret, stand in paralyzed horror? Here's where the story takes a turn from eerie to outright terrifying. As the figure closed in, Margaret heard a voice. Not spoken aloud, but inside her own head. A thought that wasn't hers, crystal clear. You are not alone. We have always been here. Let that sink in. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't kind. It was matter-of-fact, almost ancient in tone. And somehow, that made it even scarier. This is where things get really strange. Margaret's memory goes blank after that. She doesn't recall walking the rest of the way home. The next thing she knew, she was standing at her front door. Normally, her walk would take 20 minutes. That night, it took over 2 hours. She couldn't explain where the time had gone. Missing time is one of the most consistent hallmarks in cases of alien abduction or close contact experiences. Witnesses often describe gaps, where hours vanish with no recollection. And Margaret wasn't the only Australian in the 1970s to report this. In fact, in 1972, just 1 year before her encounter, a family near Melbourne reported losing several hours after seeing a strange light hovering above their car. Their watches stopped, and when they woke up, they were miles down the road. Backhand index pointing right. So here's my question to you. Do you think missing time is evidence of abductions, or could it be explained by something like microsleep, where the brain just blanks out under stress? Margaret's ordeal didn't end that night. In the days following, she discovered burn-like marks on her arms, as though she'd been exposed to radiation. She had nightmares of the glowing figure standing over her bed. Her old wristwatch had stopped ticking at exactly 10:37 p.m., the approximate time she would have been on that road. It never worked again. Friends noticed she seemed different, more withdrawn, anxious, easily startled. She also developed a deep fear of walking alone at night, something she never had before. What's even more chilling is that Margaret eventually became fascinated with paranormal studies. She began journaling her dreams and researching encounters similar to hers. It was as if the experience had awakened something in her. When you compare her case to others, the similarities are uncanny. The glowing figure recalls descriptions from UFO sightings around the same period. The telepathic message mirrors what abductees worldwide claim to have experienced. The burns and missing time are hallmarks of high strangeness encounters. Skeptics have their theories: hallucinations, stress, or even sleepwalking. But those explanations don't account for the physical evidence: the burns, the broken watch, the lost time. Believers, on the other hand, argue that Margaret's case is part of a larger puzzle, that entities, whether extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or spiritual, are weaving in and out of our reality in ways we barely understand. So what happened to Margaret that night in 1973? Was it a ghost tied to Australia's haunted landscape? Was it an alien encounter, part of the global wave of abductions? Or was it something even stranger, a glimpse into another dimension, another layer of reality we rarely see? We may never know for certain. But what we do know is this: Margaret's experience left a permanent mark on her life, and her story remains one of Australia's most haunting paranormal mysteries. Backhand index pointing right now. I want to hear from you. If you were in Margaret's shoes, walking that lonely road and seeing that glowing figure, what would you have done? Do you believe her encounter points to aliens, ghosts, or something else entirely? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading them. And remember, sometimes the scariest part of a story isn't what we know, it's what we can't explain.